Okay, so we've got the pieces in place, and I think we ought to just put some more wood on it. And let's see, we want to get some of that stuff over there, John, that's under those big logs. And we'll just set the wood on there very gently, and it should catch. I think we can just go right on top now, huh? I think we've got enough coals under there. That this should catch on fire with very little difficulty. We may have to shift some coals around to get it going. But we're using pretty good sized pieces of wood here. And again, these pieces are bisque fired, so they're very rigid and not too easily broken. Let's see. I could use a couple of short pieces over on this side, John. Okay, that's a beauty. Okay. Now what we're going to be doing is we're just going to let this get going, and then we're just going to keep feeding wood into it tonight and get a real good sized bonfire going. And when we get to that point, we get a lot of flames going, we'll get back to this, and maybe you'll be able to see the pots inside the hot coals at orange heat or whatever temperature we get to, and we might get a little hotter than that tonight. And because of that extra heat, we may get some special color effects that we couldn't get in the lower firing. So we'll get back to you. Well, you can see we've got quite a bonfire going, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what we did to get this thing started. We did finish piling up a huge stack of wood on this thing, teepee style in all directions, so that when it burned down, it would fall into the middle on top of the pots. We moved our big logs around the perimeter of the fire to help contain the heat and move it from the outside of the fire back down into the inside. And I think you can see very carefully some of the pots in there, and they look to be orange hot to me, and I'm not sure we're going to need to add more logs on this or not. I think we can just let it burn down, and then we'll come back a little later on, and perhaps we'll be able to see the pots later. If not, then we'll come back in the morning and take a look at the finished results. Good morning. Well, we finished our final bonfire, and rip-roaring fire it was. And we're out here kind of early in the morning, a little anxious to take a look at these things. And I've noticed that they're still very hot because there is a lot of probably hot ash underneath the fire yet, and probably some coals that are still burning. But I think you can see our pots starting to emerge here. And I do hear a little pinging, but I think that's from the glaze that John put on the inside of his pieces. I think what I'm going to try and do is fish out our 3 little bowls first. And here's one of them. And it looks like it made it through the firing all right. And it's got a lot of ash on it yet, but I think if you look closely, one of the glazes we put inside, and I'll have to go back on my records and make sure that I know which one this is, has a copper red on it that's really very nice. I don't know if you can see that there or not, but we'll take a closer look at that a little later after we've washed it up. I think, well, we've washed all of the efforts that we've come up with in the last couple days, and what I'd like to do at this point is discuss them individually. On our ash firing in the tube kiln, we did discover that we could get a special glaze effect that varied tremendously, and I think you can see that in our first effort and our second effort, where we got a brown clay body here with a slight sheen, with green ash glaze on it that's kind of rough, and a sort of beige surface with the ash glaze again that again is rough. And I think with some practice and perhaps propping these up on some bricks or something in the firing, that they might come out with smoother surfaces. On our local clay, I think we got brilliant color. I really like this. It's got some nice earth tones. We've got a nice reduction pattern, and I think that reduction pattern can be played with during the firing. And although we did get just a slight crack in the surface, I think this clay body has a lot of potential. The other piece we fired with it was the raku clay. We did spray the copper solution on the outside, and I can see some green and some light blues, and a little of the solution wiped off, but most of it stayed on. There's some yellow in there and so on, and just the oxidation reduction pattern on the inside I think is very nice also. On the other small piece that we sprayed the copper solution on the outside, we got a good amount of color variation, from kind of a pinkish red to a blue to an orange to a white band around the top where the spray missed. And then we have, again, the spray up at the top. We placed the, I think it was the Bernard copper lead glaze on the inside of this one, which didn't mature properly, but I believe if we mixed that in a slightly different proportion, that would smooth out also. Then we glazed the inside of this one. I don't remember with exactly what, but it turned out to vitrify nicely, and it's a nice dry surface, and it does accept some reduction, but it has a nice contrast, I think, to the outside, which was covered with the red art slip that we sprayed on it. And you can see there's a nice line here that can be played with decoratively between the two surfaces. The last piece that we glazed for you, we did, I think, with a Gersley borate copper solution. I don't remember what else was in there, but we did get some copper red out of it. And I think if this is scrubbed up more, some of that would come to the surface. And we left the clay color on the outside. We have a real nice color band right here. And I think that shows a lot of potential also. On John's pieces, we got a lot of color variation, from orange to yellow, and a good mix of things that I thought was really very nice, and I'm sure John's pleased with these also. This one shows the flame pattern that occurs in an oxidation and reduction atmosphere, which I think is very handsome also. On the larger pieces, I think they turned out quite well. As you remember, we sawdust fired this one on my right, and although it is much more subtle in color effect than the piece on my left that we had in the pitch fire last night, I like this one just as well. And this one again has a lot of color variation. It's very nice, and it has some very nice things happening up in here, sort of a dry blend of color. It's very subtle that I really like a lot. So I think we've been very successful in our attempts. I'm very pleased. I hope you have a lot of fun with these techniques. When we get back to Illinois, and in the studio set there, we'll make further assignments for you. Okay, so we're ready to put the top on now. Now you noticed before that I could get inside here and smooth off these inside edges. Obviously I'm not going to do that right now, but I will do that as soon as I cut the lid off. Or segment the box, I should say, into the lid form. Again, I'm lining it up very carefully, as close to alignment as possible. Now I'm squeezing the slip. And see if you can't watch that slip come out again now. I think you can. And that's what you want. And you can assume that it's also squeezing out on the inside as well. Okay. Then I'm going to remove that. And I use that slip to fill in some of those little cracks that you may get between the slabs too. If one slab sticks out slightly more than another one, it can fill in some of that gap or distance factor, however it may be. And then you can take your straight paddle all the way around. This helps get those nice, straight, neat corners. And this is kind of an exercise in precision. So what we'd like you to have here is a cube as uniform as you can possibly make it. smooth down everything with a sponge, which I've already done, and make sure everything is square. These are all straight edges now, because it's very easy to bend those out of shape. And check the lid the same way, okay, and it looks very square to me. If you can't tell by eye, then use a straight edge. And now this should sit on top of the original surface, and if it is an 8-inch by 8-inch cube, an equilateral cube, it should sit in any direction, okay? So let's give it a test and make sure that this is right. And by golly, I think I did it. There we go. It'll fit in any number of directions now. And that's the ultimate test for precision work, I think. So now you're ready to let this dry into the leather hard state. If you want to do a little carving on the outside or some texture work, fine. Once you've done this, then you're ready to go on to other projects.